welcome to Today in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone, and I'm excited to be back in studio. It has been a long time since I've had a chance to sit in front of the camera here with Lauren and Jen and the rest of the crew helping us out in person. As you know, we've been doing a lot of Zoom episodes. But the election series has given us an opportunity to kick back into high gear and to bring this show to you live from the studio. Well, not live from the studio, but recorded from the studio. Welcome, and I'm really excited today to introduce you to Anthony Caliri. Did I do it right?
Yes, you did.
Close enough. He's being really friendly and nice to me about that. Who's a candidate for Ward 4 City Council. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really glad that you're here to chat with us today. We haven't had a chance to meet before, so it's a part of the fun of this job that I have as volunteer here in the studio is getting to know folks. I thought it'd be great to just sort of start our conversation talking about why you're running for city council. It's so much work, and we're so fortunate that people like you step up.
Yeah. Well, I've been a lifelong Woburn resident. I went to the Wyman Elementary School. I went to the Alderman, I went to the Kennedy, and then I finally graduated from Woburn High. I'm currently in college right now studying history. I want to become a teacher.
That's great.
Yeah. And then in my senior year of high school, I was part of the School and Society class with Mrs. Scarborough, and I volunteered at the Shamrock Elementary School for 3rd grade.
That's great. So city council is a huge demand of time and things. Tell us how you hope to balance that with school responsibilities.
Yeah. Well, I have cut down on how many classes I will be taking this semester, just to kind of balance out everything.
Yeah,
so,
that's great. Where do you go to school?
Framingham State.
Yeah, that's great. You said you're studying history to become a teacher?
Yes.
My nephew just became a teacher.
Oh, really?
He graduated from UMass Amherst with a degree in history.
Oh, good.
And is now a teacher. So super excited to love seeing Woburn families and our young men and women do that. That's excellent. That's great. So tell us a little bit about Ward 4, and is that where you grew up, or are you?
Yes, I've lived in the same house my entire life. I live right up the street from the Kennedy. The Kennedy, you know, I go down to the Kennedy all the time to just meet people, ride bikes and stuff like that. I oftentimes go down to the Wyman Elementary School, to the playground. I've gone sometimes with my younger brother, and so
Yeah, that's excellent. So tell us a little bit about what the work that you're doing, studying history in school, right? There's a lot that we do looking at government and things. How has that helped you think about and wanting to get involved here in Woburn?
Yeah. Well, ever since I was a little kid, I was always interested in government, and I've always loved government. It's only recently, though, that I've started to become interested in local government. I used to be only interested in federal government. But just recently, since Alderman Anderson resigned, that's when I first went in to get an interview. I didn't win, but that's okay. So ever since then, I've just been watching the city council meetings and getting involved. That's
great. And what are some of the things that you are hearing from residents as the most important concerns that you want to represent in a role as city council?
So the biggest thing that I've talked to people about is infrastructure and the telephone poles and how they're really crooked. You know, how I'm sure you've probably seen it driving down Woburn, and sometimes when they take the old poles down, they drill it into the old one and they just leave it there, or they cut it in half and they drill it and they just leave it there. It's really dangerous, really.
You know, it's interesting that you said that. So I don't know if Joe Brown just started paying attention to accidents with telephone poles a couple of weeks ago, or if they just were truly a rash of them that happened. You know, there were several that, maybe not several, but there was a handful that happened.
There's probably, I mean, we see on the Facebook page, it's probably maybe once, twice a week.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
I know nothing about telephone poles, and other than that, I know they hold telephone wires. So tell me about who's responsible for maintenance of those poles, and what influence we as a city can have in making sure that they are better maintained.
Yeah, I believe Eversource is responsible for maintaining the poles. And so basically, as the alderman, I would basically just hold them accountable and make sure that when they take down an old pole, that they don't leave it, they actually get rid of it and make sure that it's safe for large trucks to drive through without hitting anything.
Yeah. Let's talk about some other infrastructure issues. I had a conversation with current city councilor Joe Demers a couple weeks ago, And one of the topics that was top of mind for residents was sound barriers on 95, 128 there. Tell us about your point of view about what you think should be done there and what you would, how you would address it.
Yeah, so I completely agree with Alderman Demas that we need the sound barriers there. It's very loud, and he did point out that the last time that they did a sound study was about 20 years ago. Now, just in my house, if there's no wind blowing and you step outside, you can hear the highway. And I'm about half a mile away from the highway. So I can only imagine how it is for those residents when they're trying to sleep or just trying to read a book quietly. So we definitely need the sound barriers there. And we need to really push the Baker administration to get the funding because they've halted that off since he came to power. I'm willing to go as far as getting petitions up and going with me, local officials, and the people who live in that area that want the sound barriers.
Yeah. So I know that Alderman, City Councilor, I guess is the term I'm supposed to use, Demir's talked about the noise study. You mentioned it as well. How do we have a sense of what the process is like to get the state to do a new noise study? Because 20 years is a lot of time. It's possible the sound has gone down, very unlikely, but it you know, a lot has changed in terms of traffic patterns and how much housing is there and probably even how much land is open.
Yeah, so I mean, as City Councilor Demas said, the state representative at the state senate, they've really pushed the Baker administration to really do this, and they haven't done it. So like I said, I think that we need to go further, and we need to get an actual petition signed by residents who live near the highway, the alderman, the state senator, and even a local representative, Catherine Clark, can even get involved in this.
Yeah, so to raise the visibility of it. Yeah, okay, that totally makes sense. That's great. What other challenges? We talked about telephone poles, we talked about infrastructure. As city councilor, obviously you represent, in this case, Ward 4, but you also have roles outside of just that ward that, you know, things like budgeting and other things. How do you look at the city overall? Are there things that are challenges or opportunities you'd really like to see us take?
Yeah, so in Woburn, it's funny because it's these big national issues that people are most concerned about, like coronavirus, whether or not we should mandate masks citywide, vaccines, going back to schools, even the Black Lives Matter movement with whether or not we should defund the police, whether or not the police should wear body cameras, whether or not we should ban the chokehold, and even our election process. You know, a lot of people don't trust our elections nowadays. So I just want to be there to make sure that people have trust in our local government, and term limits is also a big factor in that.
So let's talk about some of the things that are very local related to that. So you talked about the masking around the city, and we know that right now, at least through the end of October, students wear masks in school. For those of you who are watching, we are in the school studio, but school is not in session, and we purposely tape at a time that school is not in session. We wear masks until we get in studio, and then we take them off and we put them right back on again. So just so folks who are watching understand that what we're trying to do to be careful and protect the students and staff here. What is your point of view about the, now City Council of course doesn't make the decision about masking across the city or in schools, but certainly you are a voice to your community about that. Are there anything about our current policies and how we are making decisions around local decisions on masking or anything or vaccines that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, well, thankfully, Woburn has a very high vaccination rate. So I think as of right now, masks should still be an option to people. In terms of a vaccine mandate, as you know, the mayor mandated vaccines for all city employees. I do support that. I also support a vaccine mandate for all schools. Well, a vaccine mandate for teachers, sorry.
For staff?
Yes, staff.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing your point of view. And I do think those are important issues for people to understand how people make those decisions. What are some of the other things around the city overall that are areas that you'd like to address? So let's talk, let's not specifically talk about funding the police or anything. I don't want to
Yeah.
get into sort of national debate,
Mhm.
but we make a lot of decisions about budgeting at the city council level, and the city council has significant influence in how the budget is prioritized overall.
Mhm.
What are the ways that when you come in, if you were making these decisions, that what will you do to help make sure the city is making good decisions and
Yeah.
helping prioritize and represent the ward?
Yeah, so the biggest thing probably would be the infrastructure
Mhm.
part, is that I think it's time for Woburn to start looking at more greener opportunities when it comes to energy, like solar panels and hydroelectric power near the Hon Pond. And even paving roads. I mean, some cities now, they're paving their roads with melted down plastic. So I think there's probably a lot of opportunities where Woburn can look into to really save money on infrastructure when we go to make the budget every year.
I'm a big fan of solar power myself. I do have solar power on
Yeah.
my home, which for me personally has actually cut our electric costs, even when I take into account the cost of the solar
Yep.
panel system, quite substantially. So I feel good about using solar power. I'm
Yeah.
also not sad that my electric bill has gone down.
Yeah.
I love that that has happened.
Yeah.
I know that we have made some investments in solar in the city,
Yeah.
and we've made in the past pretty good strides in terms of planting trees and having things sort of around the city. But the more infrastructure that we build, the more buildings that go up, the fewer open spaces that we might have.
Yeah.
In Ward 4, are there areas specifically of concern around open space that might be available for certain types of things that you want to make sure we protect?
I think probably the Wyman Playground would be the biggest thing to protect. That building is such an iconic history in Woburn that I just want to protect that as much as possible. And I want to make sure that that playground is there for children in the area.
Yeah.
That's probably the
I
biggest
love that building every time.
I know.
I'm a sucker for history, so whenever I walk by, not the back end that's kind of
Yeah.
ugly added on, but
Yeah.
that front castle-like feel
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
There's also a fire station that's getting retired. Is that part of
Yep.
Ward 4 as well?
Yep.
When the new headquarters is built, of
Yep.
course, not before then.
Yep.
What would you like to see that space used for?
Probably residential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Love it. Let's talk a little bit about your campaign. So
Okay.
tell us a little bit about how you're getting out there and talking to folks, and
Mm-hmm.
any events or anything that you have coming up that you want to share with our audience.
Yeah, so I have done some door-to-door campaigning just around my neighborhood, and I have talked to people. And I don't have any major campaign events scheduled anytime in the future. Next weekend I'll be in New Hampshire, but the weekend after that I will definitely be in full-blown campaign mode, going door-to-door, and I'll also have people going door-to-door for me.
That's great. What do you be doing when you're chatting with them? What's the goal, and when you sit down and when you get that door and the door opens up, or they chat through the screen or whatever it is? What are you hoping to do during those conversations?
I just want to know what their issues are with the ward. I just want to hear from people.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about some of your favorite places in Woburn. Where do you love to hang out and
Probably
enjoy?
my favorite place in Woburn would be to walk around Horn Pond and go hiking up the hill. That'd be
It is
my
a
best
beautiful
place.
view
It
up
is.
there. I probably lived here. This should be an embarrassing, and I should not be, this should be like a big, mark against me. But I lived in Woburn for 20-ish years before I went up the mountain for the first time. I always heard
Really?
people talk about it. I am directionally challenged. I had no idea where it was. And then one day I sort of followed. I'm like, this is it. And it is lovely and wonderful up there. So I'm not surprised to hear that's one of your favorite spots. That's great.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that you enjoy. There are some businesses in Ward 4. We talked a lot about what you hope to do to support residents. Let's talk a little bit about what you hope to do to support the businesses that are in that ward.
Yeah. I think businesses should be open right now. I mean, we are coming out of a pandemic, and like I said, the vaccine rates are incredibly high in Woburn. So I think businesses should remain open just so that they can start making money again.
Yeah. And what are some of the businesses in Ward 4? So it includes...
Yeah, so it's basically all of Main Street and Woburn Center. So that's the most busiest part of Woburn. That's where the most businesses are. So
Yeah. Yes, there's lots of great shops and
Yep.
restaurants and things down there. I am fortunate that I live within a reasonable walking distance of there, so I'll
Yep.
often walk down to the library or to the center or to any
Yep.
of the the bakeries and things that
Yep.
are around there. Tell us a little bit about what are some things that we can do, pandemic aside,
Yeah.
but to continue to revitalize Woburn Center and make it a thriving, vibrant place that our residents and neighbors want to go visit.
Yeah, I think Joe Demas mentioned this the last time we were here, where he wanted to create a volunteer effort to clean up the streets if there's any trash. I would 100% want to do that, to make Woburn as clean as possible.
Yeah, that's always fun. What are some of your favorite Woburn traditions?
Woburn traditions, probably the Halloween parade.
It's hard to beat that,
Yeah.
right? I should
Yeah.
ask that question and say you're not allowed to say the Halloween parade because everyone will say the Halloween parade.
Yeah.
But it is a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
The first time I found the Halloween parade was completely by mistake.
Really?
But it wasn't 20 years into living here, if that's any comfort. But we heard a lot of noise and we were taking a walk, and so we sort of veered down and
Yeah.
there's a parade,
Yeah.
and it's a fabulous parade. So
Yeah.
super fun. I love that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of something that folks might not know about you.
I am the 8th great-grandson of William Locke, who was one of the founding fathers of Woburn.
That's pretty cool. I did
Yeah.
not know that. I
Yeah.
didn't know that you were the 8th great-grandson, nor did I know that that was the person. One of the founding fathers of Woburn. So
Yeah.
I learned something new today. That's great. What drew you to history? What you are studying it in school,
Yeah.
and what is it about that makes you want to just go deep and learn more?
I really don't know. I mean, I've just been so fascinated by it ever since I was just a little kid. I just loved it.
Yeah, things just cement in and you remember them.
Yeah.
We're a big history family in my household as well. My husband's a Civil War reenactor.
Really?
And, I've had some kids who have done some reenacting as well. So.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow,
really,
that's cool.
really fun. Yeah, it's been a rough year. They haven't done any, haven't been events this year, but still, it's like torture going to a museum with them, though. I'm not going to lie. I walk around and I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I have a passing interest in
Yep.
all the plaques. They want to read every one.
Yeah, that's me.
You want to read every one too? I should send you to the museums with my family. You would, and I'll meet you at the gift shop.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
I love it. Where can residents go to learn more about the campaign and the things that you're important to you and what you stand for?
Yeah, so everybody can, so on the campaign flyers that I'm going to be handing out within the next 2 weeks, it has my email address on it. So you can email me with any questions you want, and I will answer them.
Awesome. Tell us your email address because it'll go up on the screen. Jen
It
does
is
magical things.
caliriaunt@gmail.com.
I love it. And that's CALIRI.
Yep.
Right. For people like me who never get the pronunciation right. I practiced yours, though. I feel good about
Really?
getting it right at the beginning.
I'm honored.
So I'm really glad about that. Anything else that you want residents to know about your qualifications to run for city council or your approach to government?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I'm a lifelong Woburn resident. I love Woburn. Like I said, my family has been in Woburn for the past 300 years. I just love the city, and I just want to make it great.
I love it. What was your favorite thing? So we're in the high school building right now. Before I let you go, tell us a little bit about what your high school experience was like. What were things you loved, and looking back, what were things you might change?
What I loved is probably senior year with the School and Society. That was probably my best thing I've ever done in high school. Probably my worst.
So I'm going to stop you. I don't know what that society is.
Oh,
Tell us
so
what
the
it is.
School and Society program is taught by Mr. Scarborough, and you volunteer at one of the elementary schools in Woburn, and you help out with the teachers for about an hour, hour and a half. So I went to the Shamrock School for 3rd grade, and I worked with Mrs. Crawford there. And so you go there for about an hour and a half. You have to write a journal entry and everything, and it counts as a grade.
Well, for someone who is now becoming a teacher, what a great experience.
Yeah.
I love it. What would you change if you look back and you wanted in your high school? What would you change? Anything about the school, the programs, your personal experience?
What would I change? Probably have a better attitude towards math.
Yeah, we don't always love history
Yeah.
and math at the same time, right?
Yeah.
I personally love math. I was an economics major, and,
Really?
but I don't like geometry.
Yeah.
Like all the algebra in the world I'm good with. When it comes to geometry, there's something different about it. I never loved it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for
I
having
really
me.
appreciate your time. It's so important for our residents to get to know the candidates that they're going to be voting for, and
Yep.
really appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah, thank you.
And for those of you who are watching, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad that we get the opportunity to share all of our candidates with you. Please continue to take good care of each other.